Hello, welcome to July 12th, 2022. I'm Kurt, and this is my Good Life Meditation video. A routine that I have of making a video first thing in the morning, ostensibly to go over my life objectives and principles, but in addition to act as a journal of sorts. First, I'll review yesterday and last night, see how I did, namely with regard to applying my objectives and principles. Then I'll recite these, and then I'll plan for the coming day. Last night, I slept pretty good. I was definitely up. Had some strange dreams. I don't really recall ever remembering my dreams throughout my life, but I remember just before the alarm went off, which means I slept until the alarm went off. Yay. I had dreamed I was a clerk at a dry goods store that was being robbed. And I was trying to help my quirky, eccentric boss manage the fact of being robbed when I woke up. It's funny how the alarm goes off at such interesting times. My alarm to wake up, that is, not the alarm in the dry goods store. So that was interesting. Neither here nor there, I don't think. Yesterday was just a good solid day of work. Trudge, just plugging away. Tired, but it was a good day. Today's going to be another solid day of work. Trudge. It's like, I used to have this image on one of my desks for my job. It was an image of a man behind a plow, plowing long, straight lines. That was how I dealt with the stress. I just tried to remind myself that I'm just a plowman, plowing straight lines. Although I do it in a white-collar fashion, which means that I have to write reports and prepare Excel spreadsheets and PowerPoint and attend to meetings. Still, it's just plowing lines, straight and narrow. I also got my first look at the first image from the Jack Webb Space Telescope. Deep, apparently humanity's deepest view yet. A small area of space, just littered with galaxies. I was so impressed I made it the background on my phone so I can look at it. Amazing how my stress just evaporates away when I look at that. It's had the same effect of that one Hubble Space Telescope image of a like nature. When Hubble just stared at the one spot in space for a long time and came up, the deep field, I think it was called the deep field image. This is like the deep field, but even more so. Clearer, brighter, deeper. How can we be stressed out looking at that image? Anyway, in the afternoon, after work, and into the evening, my wife and I were looking at Akiya, old houses for sale in Japan. I found some real winners, some really neat ones. There was one. Excuse me. That was like a fully remodeled, like a row house in one of the prefectures bordering Tokyo. That was interesting. Move-in ready. There was another one that was practically a giveaway. The house was like $3,000. It had suffered some, the ground had settled under the house, and it cracked the tiles in the bathroom. Had some other damage, so it would need some work. But the guy was practically giving it away for $3,000 US. When you do the currency conversion, and it was just within walking distance of supermarket, convenience store, hospital, all that, and then had a river view, and not far from the ocean on the island of Shikoku, which is a place I'm very curious about. So, it was a good day. Very stressful day in the morning, but I pushed through, as I always do. It's what I do, after all. At least this part of my life. Okay, let's take a sip of coffee. Let's me take a sip of coffee and then do this. The good life. 7 objectives. These are, number 1, to always be ready to die, having my affairs, my relationships, and my life work in order. And I think I do. 2 is to make good and effective use of my time. And I do. You know, my job is, I get paid well, and that allows me to facilitate the things that I'm dedicated to at this point, namely my daughter's education, getting her bachelor's degree, which she's 2 years away from doing. So yeah, even though I am worn out, it's a good use of time. 3, to develop and maintain good and sound life principles, so that I have some measure and some guide to make good use of my time and to be prepared to die. 4 is to cultivate good emotional reactions, so that I'm reacting well to the circumstances and the challenges of every day. 5 is to perform good actions, just to do good things throughout the day. 6 is to recognize my true limits and my true opportunities, so that I'm not wasting my time on things that are beyond my reach, and so that I am applying myself better towards things that I can do and will have better chance of yielding good results. Okay, and then the last one is to do just one thing at a time, and to do that thing slowly and carefully and deliberately and with a steady cadence. Okay, those are my 7 objectives. Wow, I can feel it. I just took like 8 concerted sips of coffee, and I can feel it already. Good. I need it. I'm going to need a lot of coffee today. Okay, now my 30 principles are: 1, the principle of war. To always be at war with everything that I think is true, and anything that anyone proposes to me is true, or that I suspect might be true that I wish to onboard. 2 is the principle of reason, and the sub-principles of honesty, objectivity, and doubt, which is the frame of mind, and the attitude, and the path forward in approaching life. 3, the homunculus, the suggestion that I do not have a soul, but I do have a consciousness. And I know that consciousness is mortal. Consciousness is mortal. Next is the Anchorhold, the idea that my consciousness, the thing that I am, it sits in a precarious place atop my brainstem, here, settled between my ears, staring out from my eyes, like a man on a rock in the sea, with the sea churning and the tide rising and falling and the waves crashing and the cold spray. Dangerous to fall in. Can't get back on the rock. Don't fall in, but you're gonna fall in. Next is purpose. No, the home of good and evil. Right and wrong don't exist anywhere in the universe. I didn't see it when I was looking at the Jack Webb Space Telescope first image. I didn't see any good or evil out there among the stars, just starlight and energy and matter, churning and moving. Next comes purpose. My 3 purpose in life are: 1, to be a good husband and father; 2, to be a virtuous human being, working to improve the well-being of myself and others, of thinking creatures; 3, the pursuit of my life's purpose. No, my mission, not life purpose, my mission, which my personal mission, which is not the mission of raising my daughter, nor is it the mission of virtue. It's the mission of refining and sharing the story of how my encounter with the great indifference, and then the formulation of the good life creed through my book. That story is related to my book, Going Alone. Next is atomic principle. Everything is made of little bits and pieces, atoms and molecules, and everything is falling to pieces and coming back into other things. And so it's a churn, it's a dance, it's a swirl. Then the principle of nature. Everything has some particular nature, and it's good to be aware of what that is, so that I can better recognize, abide, and expect things to behave as they are going to behave. Next comes the pirate ride, the suggestion that free will is an illusion, that the life that we live is the life that we live. We never really had any choice at any juncture. There was too much going on, too much universe churning around us, prodding us one way or another. We always seem to flow like river down a stream, in the river course that is the path of least resistance. Even though it seems like we might push upstream sometimes, it's usually a result of other forces, like a river churning up against a wall at a river bend, rising above the mean level of the river at that point, simply due to the forces, the churning forces, pushing it up. It's not a willful rise, it's a determined rise. It's a consequential rise. There you go. Just like our lives are consequential lives. I like that sound. Next is maturity and the sub-principles of wisdom and fortitude. Maturity is when we wisely remember our past successes and failures, and then work to do better in the future. Thus is maturity. Then comes the social principle. We need each other, we human beings. It's better for us to bind and connect, commit, and see obligations through than to just churn about hurdy-gurdy, wading through life one consequence after another. Although given that we don't have any free will, that's, I guess, outside of our scope of control. Next comes the principle of public speaking, a reminder to be very careful about the words that I choose and the sentences I form and the paragraphs I compose in both written and spoken form, and to be very careful about what I say in front of others, and to never, ever, ever gossip. Next comes temperance, the suggestion to be careful about my consumption, to have one less bite, one less sip, to avoid working overtime, to avoid overdoing anything, just to do things in careful measure. Then comes the horror show, a simple reminder that life is a terribly frightening place. There's a lot of good stuff going on too, in spite of that fact, but where it's basically a degenerate tumble. And each of us has to take our fall, one way or another. A quick, sudden fall, or maybe a long, protracted, somersault down. Somersault. Collapse is better. The horror show. It's coming for each of us. It's here now, all around us. Next comes that which must be borne. What we have to bear is the fact of the horror show, the fact that the horror show is coming for our families and for us, and not like it's any, has any consciousness. It's just a thing. It's when life goes bad. It's the terror, the horror, the awfulness of things. And it doesn't just happen to us. It happens to all animals and even plants. That which must be borne is the fact that we have to bear that. We also have to bear the consequence and the burden of whatever we onboard through the choices in our life. For example, if we choose to become a parent, we onboard responsibility that extends beyond us, and we have to fulfill that responsibility beyond our comfort levels if necessary. Working at a job we don't like, giving up dreams that we wanted to hold, in the effort and the endeavor to pursue the fulfillment of the obligations we've onboarded by virtue of choosing to become a husband, a wife, and a parent. That which must be borne. Yep. Next comes the Feast of Offal, which is that thing that we do when we get upset, and we spew that upset to the world, letting them know, doing it in subtle ways or simple ways. Subtle ways or more complex ways, more obvious ways. Sometimes that stuff, that more obvious stuff, we save for our families, somehow reserving for the people we love most, the pain that that hurts us so much. It's not good to do that. It's better to hold it in, find a way to release that pain in other ways, but without hurting others. And when others are doing the same, when they are indulging in the release in our presence, do not soak it up, because it stains and it soils and it hurts. But to let them rant and rave, and then when they're done, to offer them a helping hand, a tissue if necessary. Next comes distraction, and another principle just after that one called agency and the great indifference. Agents are us, anything that's sentient that can think, that was aware of itself. The great indifference is that emptiness of the universe outside of all that understands seemingly that void between the stars, what's going on the ground there on Pluto, way out there in the field of stars, where the Jack Webb Space Telescope reveals this week. At least in the parts of that field where there is no life. The distraction is what we do so we don't have to see that emptiness, so that we don't have to apprehend that seemingly we're alone, namely that there's no God, and that we're responsible for ourselves, and that oblivion awaits after death. Nobody wants to see that, or few want to see that. So we distract ourselves with work and play and hobbies and sports and drinking and going to church and believing in God. We distract ourselves with our careers and our ambition and our gossip, all this stuff. It's just a feigned distraction away from the emptiness of the universe. I would rather not suffer that distraction, but just take it on, see it, and let it burn into me. The great indifference. It's the thing that is the consequence of going alone. If you go alone, and if you go to a place where you'll wind up very alone. Otherwise, you're not quite alone. Then you can't apprehend the great indifference, or at least it's really hard to do. All right, now, the best seat in the house. To be okay with who I am, where I am, and what I'm doing. Then the Path of Wildness, which is a way to break through from one life into an adventure of sorts that leads us to a new life. It's collecting facts and then making a decision. And if we can't quite make the decision, then to listen to our gut and push off into a great life adventure via the Path of Wildness. And I'll come to the great life adventure in just a minute. Okay, next comes the risk of avoiding risk. The surface level risks in life are the things that we are recommended to take care of in the course of living. These are education, career, home, family, and security. The deep risk is spending some time to find ourselves, so to speak. A less encouraged activity, although one yielding great fruit, especially for those that feel called to do it. Some seemingly are not. It's tough to do both, to attend to the surface level risk and the deep stuff. Pardon me. Next is sin and damnation. There are 7 sins in my worldview, and the consequence of engaging in these sins is damnation, but not in some eternal sense, but just in the here and now, in this moment. These sins relate to believing things too readily, being dishonest, and gossiping. And they are falsity, credulity, faith, superstition, dogma, authority, and gossip. Engaging in any of those things and let the damnation begin. Next comes complete oblivion, the idea that the suggestion that there's nothing after life, that all that is to follow is just that same emptiness that we seemingly did not know before we were born. We won't have reuniting anyway with our loved ones. We won't have a chance to reconcile, therefore, and there won't be any justice. All that we'll ever get is what we have now and what we do today. And then tomorrow. Until these days come to an end. And complete oblivion is the result. The next one is great life adventure. It's a time to have an experience or one or more experiences throughout life that kind of form the nucleus and the seed of our identity. It's important to do a great life adventure if you feel called to do it. Like I said, some do not seem to be called to do it, although I expect that just about everybody hears that call somewhere deep within. It's a great life adventure. It's a good thing to do, especially when you're young. It's harder to do when you get older. And then comes the season of philosophy, which is the time to record what we've learned. Keep the pen and paper handy. And then the bullseye aim, shooting for the mark but usually missing. And just remembering that that's the case. The uphill climb, a reminder to keep steadily trudging upwards, to not sit down and rest too long. It's good to rest sometimes, but so little time, so much to see. Arena and utility is next. Life is this arena for the development of our objectives to help us with our principles, to help us with our objectives. And this is an arena to use those towards that end, towards better living in every sense. Next comes nothing is enough, a principle that goes beyond temperance to a suggestion that, there you go. It's a suggestion not just towards abstinence or temperance even, but just that happiness, peace, isn't found in cluttering ourselves with stuff. It's better found in restraint. Self-restraint. That is. And then lastly, the principle of fun. A reminder to have a good time in the course of life and today, and also to look forward to tomorrow. Anticipate what's to come, the great life adventure to come, the experiences to come, even the mundane living to come, and to look back and remember happily the experiences of the past. There, that's my good life creed for today. 7 objectives and 30 principles. Now, for my plan for today, I'm going to get up now, start this upload, read my Bible verse. I'm reading from Jeremiah today, and then I'm going to take the dogs for a walk, feed the dogs, and then get started to work. I have maybe 4 or 5 meetings today. Not too bad, but I have a lot of work to do, and I will do it. I will persevere. I will do my duty. Take care. Be safe, but not too safe.